Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my banyan style Dwarf Schefflera. Here is a look at the Dwarf Schefflera. So my goal over the winter was just to let it grow, keep it as vigorous as possible. And there's 3 or 4 branches that just took off like rockets. And they were hitting the grow light above the tree, and it was blocking out light getting to the rest of the branches. And I was worried that a lot of branches might die off from shade. They just weren't getting light. So I thinned the tree down to a pair of leaves on every growing tip over the winter, so all the branches get light. So now I've got new growth coming in. This is outdoor growth, and this is all indoor growth. So the larger leaves, there's some scale insects on the older leaves. I have sprayed it twice already. So what I'm going to start with today is removing all the indoor leaves, and that will give all the growing tips light, so all these new shoots will get full sunlight, and they should grow out a little more compact than the leaves that grow indoors, which are under lower lighting conditions. So that's where I'm going to start. It'll be a defoliation, but I'm not defoliating the new growth coming in, so it'll be kind of like a partial defoliation. I'm going to begin now removing all the indoor leaves. So here I go, and I'll just be pruning them off close to the base of the branch, and you can see there's scale insects on it. So I'll be removing a lot of the scale insects by removing these indoor leaves. And the tree has been out in the greenhouse here for quite a while now, so it's got lots of vigor in it now. So defoliation won't be a problem. So I'll just snip them off carefully, and I'll be spraying it again after this defoliation. And I have a lot of decisions to make on this tree. How big do I want it? I may need to do a hard reset, cutting all the branches back and regrowing them to get taper in the branches. Right now, some of the branches, they're meandering, they're quite long, but there's not a lot of taper in them. So I have to decide, well, how long do I want the branches to run before I prune them back and get more branching and more taper, and hopefully more movement to them too. Most of these banyan style trees, they have a lot of movement. The branches kind of snake all over the place, and that's one of the charms of a banyan style tree, is the snake-like branches and all the aerial roots that drop down. And that's how the tree spreads out. The roots become prop roots that support the branches, and they just keep growing wider and wider. So that's one of my decisions, is, well, how big do I want this? I think eventually, it can grow quite a bit larger, but there's no point just growing it larger if all the branches are skinny. It'll make the trunks look insignificant. So I may have to do some hard pruning in the future to get it compact, and then regrow a lot of the branches, and that'll give me taper to the branches. This will get all the new growing tips lots of light too, which will help make the leaves more compact. You can, about a month before a show, you can defoliate the tree and then show it when the new leaves are coming in, a little bigger than this, maybe sort of this size, and it looks really scale and miniature. So I may have to do that. I want to show this tree in the fall show in Toronto, if it's looking good. So it will need a new pot. It's in a plastic training pot now, so it'll need a nice ceramic pot, and I'm not sure what pot yet, but it will get one. You can see some of the weaker branches, they're just starting to put out growth now. The leaves haven't extended. And you can see this is one of the branches that grew indoors, and it's very straight, thick. There's no subdivision and no movement, so that will definitely have to be cut back. You don't want big long straight sections on the tree. You want to get all those branches with movement and taper. If possible. And this tree is getting quite old now. It's probably 25 years from, nursery stock. It was a pot with just a big clump of trees in it, and I have been working on it ever since, and it's slowly getting better and better. It's one of my favorite trees, for sure. One of my more developed ones. My Boa Constrictor, this little one, was in here in the planting, and roots were growing over top of it. And I had a fairly hard job getting it out because it was getting covered in roots, and yeah, so I moved it out because I thought if the roots grow any thicker, I'll never be able to get that snake out. It'll become part of the planting. So I carefully removed it. You can also see there's a lot of algae on the trunks, and that needs to be cleaned up. They need to be scrubbed with soap and water to get the discoloration off them, to show off the nice light bark. So there's lots of work to go on this tree, but it's nice that I've got it outside now in the sunlight, and it should do much better than being indoors for the winter. So at the Toronto show, I did give away 2 trees. I gave away my medium-sized Ficus religiosa to Vince, and I gave away my Moreton Bay ficus, one of them. I have 2 from Florence, and I gave that to Blue Jay Bonsai. So I did cut down my tree collection a little bit, but I was also given another tree by Johnny, so I got rid of 2 and I gained 1. But I have more diversity in species and less repeats of the same species, so that's my goal, is to kind of cut down the collection so I only have maybe 1 or 2 of each species, keeping the interesting species. I like having a diversity of species because it teaches you the characteristics of each species, and when people ask you questions, how do I manage this species? Well, you have one and you practice on it, and you kind of know what to do, when to do it, and how they react to pruning, and all the how to apply bonsai techniques to the different species. And that's how you learn. If you just have, limit yourself to just a few species like junipers and pines, well, you become really good at that species, but not so good at all the others. And I think it's important to be able to manage many different species of bonsai, and it's nice to have a variety of trees on your bench so they're not all the same. Okay, we're getting there. It's nice to see the structure of the tree again. It's been a long time. It was a long winter, a long cold winter. And I generally do let most tropical trees grow over the winter because, they grow quite weakly indoors, because even though you have grow lights, it's not the same as sunlight on your trees. You don't have the same amount of air circulation. it's hard to manage insects indoors. In my plant room, it's so crowded that I can't, you have this big canopy on this Schefflera, and it's hard to see if it does have insects because it's hard to even look at the trees in the plant room. It's so crowded. So that's another reason why I'm trying to thin down my tropicals, so I have more room to see the trees, water them properly, fertilize them. And yeah, I think this year the health of my better trees suffered because I had so many cuttings and so many duplicates of species that I've got to cut down the collection and kind of really manage the trees, my long-term older trees, manage them really well rather than trying to manage more trees not so well. And I think that will improve my overall collection. Less trees, but better managed, better health on them, and yeah, they should develop better too. Yeah, this winter I had trees on the floor. I had no room for them. I even had to leave a few out here in the greenhouse, and I lost my Ming Aralia because it just got too cold and I had no space for it indoors. And I didn't have space indoors to move the trees around. I couldn't take a tree off the bench and examine it. It was just too crowded. I had no bench space, no floor space. It was just packed in there, and the trees were just, a lot of them just made it through the winter and they didn't look so good. So hopefully this winter I can manage them better. That's the goal, and I say that goal every year, but this year it really I noticed a lot of trees were suffering. So, yeah, that is my goals, is to overwinter the trees better. If you overwinter your trees, the goal is to have them come out of winter as healthy as they go in, and that certainly wasn't the case this year. I had whitefly in the plant room, scale insects. I couldn't get to the trees. It was hard to water them. It was just not a good situation. And sometimes tropical trees are hard to give away because everyone has the same problem. They just don't have all the space indoors to store your trees and keep them in good light. So a lot of people don't want tropical trees in Canada because it takes a lot of work in the winter to keep them healthy. And you don't just want to give them away to anyone. You want to give them away to someone who will appreciate them and take care of them. There's lots of people you could give trees away to that the next time you talk to them, the trees will be dead. But you don't want that if possible. You want someone who, knows what they're doing with bonsai and can take care of the trees and develop them. And that feels good if you give them a good home. All your effort growing them to that stage is not wasted. But if you give them away to someone and they die within a few weeks, it's kind of a waste of your efforts and some good material. Even here I can see that there's a few drier areas in the soil just because it was so dense. It was hard to water it properly. But I sure like Schefflera as a bonsai species. I think they're absolutely wonderful. And they're good trees to grow because they can take drying out, they can take a bit of overwatering. They're quite strong growers. Any houseplant is usually pretty good. Or any tree that's sold as a houseplant, they're generally pretty forgiving. But like any tree, you can kill any species. You can't neglect them totally. There is a certain amount of care every tree requires. And you know, bonsai is not an easy hobby, and I think that's one of the things that attracts a lot of people to the hobby, is that, you know, it takes, the more care and effort you put into the hobby, the more of a reward you get out of it. So I like that about the hobby, is it's, you know, it takes a certain skill set you learn and discipline. It certainly takes a lot of discipline and knowledge. Study trees in nature, how they grow, to get the forms. So there's, you know, an artistic element to it, self-expression, you know, what you're trying to convey to the person viewing your tree, the emotion, the feeling you get. So it's a very rewarding hobby. I certainly enjoy it, that's for sure. And you know, after this weekend show, you're just totally pumped up. You're like, oh, inspired by all the other trees. And it's a good feeling. It's you see the trees and it makes you want to get better. You see what can be done and you go, wow, that's how I want my tree to look, or I want it to be that healthy, or I want the leaves to be that small and the branch structure is that good. And it's very inspiring. It encourages you to always do better. Well, I've been talking so much, I think I have all the older indoor leaves pruned. Oh, maybe I missed a few back here. Just doing a final inspection here. Yeah, that's looking good. So all these leaves that I took off, I'll show you the pile. So here is the tree, and then over here I have the huge pile of leaves, and they all have scale insects on them, so I'm going to throw those on the compost heap, get them out of the greenhouse here. And then my next step, I'm going to spray the trees down with soap and water, eventually getting rid of those scale insects entirely. I find if you spray regularly, you know, every 3 to 4 days for a few weeks, all your problems will disappear. Here is a look at the trees now, or tree. It's kind of fused together as one tree. So there's a lot of aerial roots. Some of them are good, some aren't so good. There's a lot of root hairs that never developed, never touched the ground and thickened up. So I can prune a lot of the dead roots away. And you can see, you know, some of the branches, like this one, it's very twisty and snake-like, but there's not a lot of taper to it. So that is a branch that maybe has to be cut back in the future and developed again to get more taper. It has the movement, but just not the taper. But, you know, maybe I want it snaking along like that. It doesn't have to be tapered as long as the main trunks have taper. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of decisions coming on this tree for future styling. But for now, I am going to spray it with soap and water. When you're spraying the tree with soap and water, a lot of these leaves are new leaves and they're very delicate. So if you use too strong a soap mixture, you can get some browning, or you can kill off some of the younger leaves. So A dilute mixture of soap and water is quite effective. I use 40 parts water to 1 part liquid dish soap. And yeah, these Scheffleras are quite tough. They have a waxy coating on the leaves. But some species you have to be careful. If you spray the new leaves emerging, they'll just go brown and crispy and dry up, and you'll lose that new growth. So yeah, always, test the soap and water on a small section of the tree first to make sure it's not too strong, make sure the tree can take the soap and water. It's not very harsh at 40-1, but there's some trees that are very sensitive. So you have to be careful. It's always wise to test a little area, rinse it off, let the tree sit for 3 or 4 days and see how the leaves react, if they shrivel up or if they just keep growing. So these are quite tough, so I'm going to spray them with the soap and water at 40 parts water to 1 part liquid dish soap. It should be quite safe. That's what I've been using on it, and I haven't seen any ill effects at all. Someone asked what soap I'm using. So here's what I'm using at the present moment. It is just a great value. It was from Walmart, and it's 5 liters. It was really inexpensive. It says gentle on hands, cuts through grease, original scent dishwashing liquid. So that's what I'm using. It's made in Canada, so everyone in Canada is buying Canadian, so that's what I'm using. All right, here I go spraying the tree. Now when you're misting it, some people's lungs are quite sensitive to the soap, the misty soap in the air, so I would recommend you hold your breath while you're spraying it with the soap and water. Finish the spray and go outside, breathe, wait for the soap particles flying in the air to dissipate, and then come in and continue working on your tree, because I don't think it's good breathing in this misty soap into your lungs. So here I go spraying. So I'm going to take a deep breath. Okay, so that is sprayed down. So I leave it sit, and if I notice the water starting to dry, then I rinse it off. So I usually leave it for about 4 to 5 minutes and then give it a really thorough rinse. So I'll just let it sit and come back. Okay, it is time to rinse the tree off now, so I'll rinse it very thoroughly. I'll run probably several watering cans over the branches and the trunks and through the soil to clean all the soap out. Running the soap and water through your soil is another effective way of reducing pests in your soil. So if you have mealybugs can live in the roots and then they emerge and climb up the trunk. So sometimes it's a good idea to soak your soil in soap and water also, and it'll help deter insects in your soil, that's for sure. And sometimes you have to do that to clean the insects out of your soil. So there's one watering can, so I'll refill that and run another one through. And like I said, you have to spray every 3 to 4 days for a couple of weeks. Scale insects, they start off life as little microscopic crawling insects, and then as they mature they put a shell around them, lay their eggs, and then more microscopic insects come out of those shells. So you have to keep spraying them to stop the cycle. This first day here will kill all the crawling microscopic scale insects, but there still may be some scale blisters on the trees which are resistant to the soap and water. So just keep spraying it and your problems will disappear. And when trees go outside, there's natural predators that keep the insect population under control also. So indoors it's a lot harder keeping insects off your trees than outdoors. And that's one of the big problems growing tropicals in Canada is you get all these insects in the winter. Okay, so that is rinsed. I'll tilt the pot up to get it to drain really well. So like that. Maybe put this roll of tape under, it's elevated a bit. That should help it drain really well. Scheffleras like moist soil but not wet soil, so you have to be careful with the watering that you don't have them sitting in wet soil all the time or the roots will rot. So if you keep it at a moist all the time but not soaking wet, they will do really well. You can see over the winter that my moss turned brown. There's a few spots that have some green on it, but basically it all died off. Over here, here's an example of one of these shoots that was reaching up to the grow light, and you can see how thick it is, and it's very straight and is maybe not in a good location. It's like growing straight on top of this branch, and it zapped all the vigor out of this growing tip here. So yeah, you can't just let your trees grow anyway. You have to manage the growth, and grow them out slowly and carefully is the best way for sure. So my next step, I'm going to step back and look at the styling of the tree. I have a lot of cleanup to do, all the leaf debris, there's some weeds over here that have to be picked out. But I want to step back and have a look at the overall styling of the tree and come up with a plan to manage the growth and improve the tree structure for the future. I'm looking at the tree now, just examining the structure. So I have a very thick aerial root in this section dropping down, and all these branches kind of grew up and thickened, and it's creating like quite a dense clump on that side, which I don't think is a bad thing. It helps with the asymmetry of the banyan style. You don't want it to look too symmetrical. You want some asymmetry if possible, so I'm extending this side, the right hand side, out further than the left hand side. But that one root is getting very, very thick, and there's a certain point where it starts to lose the realistic scale of the image of the tree. The smaller prop roots, even though some aren't vertical, that can be corrected when I repot the tree. But some of the smaller ones are looking good, but that one thick one I think is getting too thick. It's kind of half the diameter of the trunks, and that's just getting out of scale. And even the ones on the right hand side here, there's two roots that kind of curve down. I think those are getting a bit too thick. They're not the worst in the world, but I could maybe reduce it from 2 roots here just to 1. That would help. Yeah, so in a banyan style, you're managing not only the branches, but the aerial roots and the root system of the tree. So overall, I'm not disliking the spreading branches. I like the low horizontal ones. It looks very realistic in a banyan style. A person would be very small in this planting. And some of that strong growth that just shot up vertically over the winter, that can be probably pruned away totally if it's not in the right place. So that's another thing I can correct. This planting is very low, and to see the trunk and branch structure, you almost have to get to eye level. So if I show this tree, it would have to be elevated so a person looking at it would look in at this kind of a level to see all the branch structure in that, especially if the canopy is fairly full. Because if you're looking down at the tree, all you see is this massive foliage. You don't see the branches so much. So it's possible I could raise it in the pot a bit. I've seen a lot of Scheffleras where there's too much root versus branch structure and trunk structure on the tree. You don't want your root system to be so exposed that it looks out of scale or it doesn't look realistic, if that's your goal, to create a realistic miniature image of a banyan tree, which is my goal here. So I'm reluctant to, raise the roots up too high, because then it'll be all roots and branches coming out and trunks, and the roots will overpower the structure of the tree. So there's a balance in there somewhere. And you also have to manage your root system, just like the aerial roots. Some roots can get too thick and it starts to throw the whole scale value of the planting out of whack. So you have to be careful of that too. Yeah, so there's a lot of decisions coming on the tree as far as styling it, pruning it. And it's not something you just do quickly. You've got to really examine the tree and see what's working and what's not. With a bonsai, you're always evaluating and reevaluating the design, seeing what's working, what's looking good, what's getting out of proportion. Some branches might start to get into proportion. Bonsai is a changing art form. It's never static, so you're always reevaluating, managing your growth, and trying to improve the tree at all times. I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon cleaning up the tree. So I'm going to remove all the brown moss. I'm going to weed it. I'm going to clean all the debris out that's fallen down. And if I get time, I'll scrub up all the trunks, getting the algae off them to clean them up. And while I'm doing that, I'll check for any scale blisters and remove them, and maybe respray it again. And that's what I'll be doing this afternoon. And then tomorrow, we're going to come back and do some more pruning and some of the structural work on the trees. I don't want to do it today. I don't want to rush. I want to really study the trees and make the best decisions possible. So that's it for part 1 of the series on my Banyan style Dwarf Schefflera. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.